All right. Thank you so much for having me present this, which is my distilled thoughts on abstracts after having been a program committee member for PASS Summit for several years, as well as help organize other conferences and reading lots of abstracts, as well as writing my own. So I thought I'd share that knowledge with the rest of you. Hopefully it will help you. So the agenda for this session is, first of all, look at what is an abstract. I mean, we have to know what we're talking about first. Then, who is this abstract for? And then we'll look at the components that makes up this abstract. An abstract is, in summary, it's a brief summary of what you're going to talk about. So what is your session about? You can also call it a synopsis or a précis. But most importantly, this abstract, your abstract, is your elevator pitch. It means this is why you should pick my session. So it is very important to get your message across in a proper manner. But this also means you have to look into who are you writing this abstract for? First of all, I say that we have 3 target groups for this one. The most important, you might think, is the program committee, because they are the ones who are reading your abstract and deciding on whether they should pick you or not. And there are several reasons why they should pick you, and there are several reasons why they shouldn't, depending on their balance of their conference, what topics they're looking for. But also, when you're writing for them, you need to think about what to catch. What are they thinking about? Why would your session stand out? Then you have the attendees, the regular attendees of the conference. Why should they come to your session? Why shouldn't they go to Rob Sewell's or some other famous person in Katrine Williamson? Another excellent example of famous people in the session or in the speaker world that we need to compete against sometimes when we are delivering our sessions. Why should they pick your session instead of somebody else's? So again, you write your abstract for the program committee, and you write it for the attendees. And last of all, you write the abstract for yourself. Most speakers I know of write the abstract for a conference long before that conference starts and long before that session is written. Most of us probably don't start writing that session until closer to 2 months, 1 month before this conference starts, because it takes a while to get the program committee to review your session, accept your session, and so forth. Of course, when you are reusing an abstract that has already been picked, and the same with the session has already been delivered, it's easier. But still, you write this as much for yourself to think about what message do I want to come across with? What does my session mean for me? And what do I want to the audience and the program committee to sit with after this session? So this way you have 3 different target groups, and you have to think about all of these 3 when you're writing your abstract. The abstract itself has several different components. First of all, you have your title. Then you have your blurb, and the blurb might or might not be used in different conferences. Then you have the body of the abstract. Most conferences also have some goals in here, but even if they don't, I'll explain why you need them. And lastly, you have additional information. And some of these additional information are more important than others. So the rest of my session, even though I have now put in the different components, I will now start talking about how you use these different components in order. So how I think that you should go ahead and write or compose your abstract. So that's why we start with the last part first, at least one of them, which is what level is your session? And normally we look at different levels in a conference. We have 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 sessions. So introductory sessions. Then you have 200, which is slightly closer look, not as high level. Then you have 300, which is hands-on detailed level, and 400 and 500 are various degrees of expert level. And this is, in my opinion, the first thing that you should think about when delivering your session. And why is this so important? Well, it is important because you need to think about what audience do you want in your session. Do you want to have people who are fresh to this field of expertise, or do you want to have people who are really knowledgeable, or if you want to really have the deep dive nerds in your session? Or do you feel that what you want to come across with is more of a sales pitch? So you just want to show a bird's eye level. So again, trying to communicate to both your program committee and to your attendees, why should you go to my session? Well, if you are looking for an introduction level, fine, go for level 100. But also you need to think about this from the organizer's point of view, because they want to balance their conference. It's important to try to play against all the different kinds of audiences that might come to your conference. So you have salespeople, you have students, people starting out, and you have also the deep level techies who have been working in this field for ages. So you need to have a balance of the really deep technical sessions, 400 and 500, if you can. You have to have lots of 300 sessions, but 100 and 200 sessions are also very important because there is so much new information that is coming out, so much new technology comes out that might not be at the level where even most experienced audience can come in at the 300 or 400 level. So having 100 and 200 sessions is also very important in balancing your conference. So thinking in a strategic manner, you might think that having a level 100 plays very well against pulling in new tech. At the same time, there might be too many 100 sessions, so the audience the program committee has to start shifting these out and try to find more 300 sessions or 400, 500 sessions because they haven't gotten enough of them. So from a technical point of view, you have to think about what level do I feel is right for my session, as well as do I think this conference will play more against the 100 and 200 level attendees. Maybe I shouldn't submit a 400 session to new source of data. Maybe I should put 100 instead, because that's what they will mostly be targeting. Just be prepared, of course. Even if you have a 400 session and you have clearly stated that in the level requirement, as well as in the abstract and in additional expectations of your audience, lots of people don't see it. So you will always have that person or those persons coming in and not being at level and trying to pull you down to their level. So just be prepared for that. Second part of planning your abstract and your session is the goals. What do you hope the attendees will take from your session? What will they sit with after the session? Will they go home and start experimenting themselves, or will they wait for you to load up your scripts and start using those as templates, like Ola Hallengren's scripts, for instance? Or is it just getting them interested and eager to dive in themselves? The goals aren't always in use in every conference that you will submit to, but it is always a useful planning tool for yourself. Again, what do I want to communicate? So having goals set for yourself is a good way to start your abstract. Then the body of the abstract, this is where the main information comes in. And depending on who your target audience is, you need to think about how to put this in. So for yourself, this is again, I'm starting to write this abstract a year before the conference starts. So I will need to think about what should my session cover. And yeah, it is written long before, so it can help focus it. At the same time, if you are reusing an abstract that has been used several times, doing a rerun of the body of the abstract for yourself, as well as refreshing it for the new audience that you're sending in, is very useful, because it makes you think about, again, do I really need to send this one again? Has anything changed since the last time, which is clearly normal if you're using Azure services, so then as part of your topic. So it's very useful to think about what the abstract means for yourself. And yep, wrong set it up there, but the program committee is your second target group. And key considerations in this group is, again, what will my session cover? So detailed explanation or summary explanation of what your session will cover. And why should you pick my session to be at your conference? And in this, you have to think about also what kind of content are they looking for in their conference? So are you targeting a conference that is speaking about Azure or cloud specifically? Evolve around that. Are you talking to a more general data, typical Data Saturday conference? You can think in other ways on how to formulate yourself. But at the same time, you need to think about that there are keywords that people will notice when they are reading your abstract and the body of the abstract, whether you are talking about Synapse or you're talking about Purview, or you're pushing other technologies or DBA tools or something else. Put in the keywords that people are reading, because I will mention this again and again, but a program committee reads hundreds of abstracts. And when you are reading hundreds of abstracts on a volunteer basis to make sure that the conference is right, you might not be able to read detailedly every single thing or understand everything. You might scan them quickly, especially the second time around. And certain words will pop out. So think about putting in buzzwords or eye-catching words as part of the body that will stand out for the program committee as they read. As for the attendees, again, why should you go to my session? What is it in my session that means that it is interesting for you? So this is what my session will cover. And again, eye-catching words, because as with the program committee, even though the program committee reads lots more abstracts, the audience and the attendees of a conference might prepare themselves for the conference and read through everything. And there will be 15, 20, 30, hundreds of abstracts that are being set into the schedule. And depending on the size of the conference, many parallel. So having a good session body with eye-catching words that they can click on is good. Also important that since you are communicating the essence of your session in the abstract, don't write too short. You need to ensure that all key considerations of your session is covered. I've seen abstracts of 1 sentence, 2 sentences, and normally that means you haven't put an effort into it. Are you even sure that what you're going to talk about? How do I know that this session will be any more prepared than your abstract is? And those kind of abstracts will probably just end up in the trash bin. And humor can help, but it depends. I mean, my humor is kind of weird, so it might not be something for everyone. But even though the humor doesn't hit either, it might hit the audience, but not the program committee or vice versa. Unless you're writing offensive stuff, it doesn't really hurt to put it in. It might not be that they get the humor, but it won't offend them either. So if you have any humorous way of pop culture references into your session, that's good. And get yourself a proofreader. Doesn't have to be a techie, doesn't have to be a peer. I use my wife. The most important part of this is your proofreader will understand if you get your message across. So you let that person read it through and then tell them to communicate back to you what they understood or what they got out of this abstract. Because if they get what you're trying to communicate, it means that people who are more knowledgeable will also understand what you're trying to get out of it, if you get your message across. Which also takes me to the next point on writing. Check your grammar. I'm Norwegian. My English is my second language. Other people have it might even be their third language. So I understand that you can't write fluent English, though most of us who have English as your second or third language tend to know grammar better than people who have it as their first language, because it's something that we've had to learn, unlike the people who are native to it, where they've just been bred with it. And then when you've checked your grammar, you check it again. And preferably, you ask your proofreader to help you, because they might spot things that you haven't spotted. And don't trust Word, for God's sake, and not PowerPoint either. The proofreading there is horrible. What can help you is Grammarly, and Grammarly is it has a free version, which is more than enough to check the body of your abstract. If you're writing long articles all the time, you will start needing the paid version. But for this, Grammarly can be a great help. Just be aware that Grammarly is trying to make you write better English, which means that if you're reusing words such as SQL or such as syntax or other key tech words, it will try to tell you to change that to something else. It will suggest something else. So just make sure that if you're using Grammarly, ignore the places where it tries to tell you to change to synonyms or something else that doesn't really fit with the message that you're sending. So the blurb is the next part to write, and the blurb is not always used, but it is a condensed pitch of your session. So a condensation of your summary. And this is the second most read part of a conference program, if it's there, because first you have your title, then you have a blurb, and then you have the abstract itself. So normally they might look at the blurb and not at the abstract if it's being used. And as with in a body, proofreading. And always, always, always check your grammar. If you're reading, again, back to why you should check your grammar, as the an abstract reviewer in a program committee, when you're reading hundreds of sessions and you have to decide between 3 who have the similar topics, similar levels of their session, and all of them are quite funny or interesting to read, but one of them is badly or has bad grammar in it, that might be a turnoff. I mean, mileage might vary. There are people on the other end here, but it might be that single point that makes people select another session instead of yours. Then we have the title, and the title is by far the most read part of a conference program or a schedule, because attendees will browse the schedule, and in a lot of cases, they will pick a session based on a title. And that title alone is enough to pull them into a session. And as I mentioned earlier, program committees might have to read hundreds of abstracts. So the title is the most important part of your abstract. It is your advertisement. So remember that all target groups here are most likely nerds in one way or another. I mean, nerds have different flavors. So humor can work. It might not, but again, it might just be that the humor that you're trying to convey just goes over their head or something else. But as long as you don't do any offensive remarks, it works. And pop cultural references can work. And again, if you're communicating and saying, okay, I want, because I love talking about movies and I want to convey my session and all the topics around storytelling, for instance, around Star Wars references, then having pop cultural references in the title, in the blurb, in the abstract, can pull the audience that you want into your session. But again, the title is the part where you sell your session. So it is important that you get something that is as eye-catching as possible. But this can be any kind. I mean, yes, it can be a pop cultural reference, but it can also be, what do you think people will trigger on? A lot of sessions that are popular are sessions of lessons learned. So story from the trenches, lessons learned from XYZ might be just as good as you never knew what happened until you clicked on this button or something else, click-mongering. But again, getting a title that conveys the message in one single sentence is the most important part of your abstract that you write, then followed with the rest we're talking about. Then you have additional information again, and additional information in this context is other stuff. So why is this important? Well, additional information in an abstract submission page is information that is not being conveyed to the audience. Your abstract, your blurb, your title, and your level will be conveyed to the audience. But if you have an additional information box you can fill in, this is a good place if you need to write something else to the program committee, some messages or some communication that you want to come across to them without having that made public. Which might be, I've delivered this session at XYZ conference, or it might be parts of this isn't publicly available yet, but will be before the conference, or something else. Again, selling your session to the program committee without having to live with that message afterwards. Of course, putting in things like, Johan, if you read this abstract, I'll give you a bottle of whiskey if you select me. Might work for me, but might be quite unpopular for others. And with that, we come to the last disclaimer, because Ben was giving me hassle about this earlier. There is, of course, no guarantee that even after following all my points and advice to the letter, that you will get your session picked. There are people involved in this, and there are several different things that they need to balance to pick the session. So there is no guarantee that you will be that your abstract will be picked. I think one of my most held sessions on Stream Analytics was not selected 4 or 5 times and then selected 10 times afterwards. And I didn't change that much in it from the first 4 times until it got selected. It didn't hit with the program committee in any of the conferences that selected me or looked at it. So don't take it personally if it isn't accepted. Just take it as an opportunity to look through it again. If it still looks solid, I mean, some of the ones I've helped others with weren't picked after I read through it the first time, but it was done afterwards. And when I looked through them, they looked nice. There was nothing really standing out as being a bad abstract, but it just didn't click with that program committee. That's just the way of doing speeches, really. Right, and that was the end of my session. Thank you so much. I hope you've learned anything, and just reach out to me if you need help with reviewing your abstract or if you have any questions or anything. Thank you.